We're here in the pecan orchard. This is the 5th of May. This is time when we're monitoring for our #1 nut pest of pecan, which is pecan nut casebearer. And for this orchard, we have already collected adult moths and pheromone traps, and we are now in the process of monitoring egg lay. In this orchard, we already have had egg lay, and the producer has already treated. What we look for to determine our treatments, we monitor the clusters for eggs. And in this case, we have an egg that's been laid on this cluster. I have flagged it. I like to flag clusters when I find activity. What I do is I write the date, stage of the egg, and what nut it is on, because I can come back and I can monitor development of the egg to monitor activity. And in this case, since the orchard has been treated, the producer can now come back, monitor these clusters for activity to make sure he's not getting damage to his clusters. The importance of this insect cannot be underrated. In some years we can see 100% crop loss, so this is an insect that we have to monitor every year, year in, year out, every orchard. And we have the tools through pheromone traps and internet prediction models that we can use to help producers monitor to know when to be in an orchard and when to scout. We cannot make treatment decisions, treat or no treat decisions based on trap catches in our pheromone traps, but we can tell a producer when to be in the orchard, when to be here to look for the eggs to make that treat, no treat decision. Okay, when we're monitoring for egg lay, monitoring activity, we know that when the egg is laid, it goes through a color change. As a rule of thumb, we say 4 to 5 days for egg maturity. The egg change goes from is white when it's first laid, then it develops a few spots, red spots, then it turns almost a pinkish color. So on this side here, I've got an egg that's been laid, which I marked here on the second nut, and it's at the pink stage, which tells me that it should be hatching. The larvae should be hatching out in a day. After emergence, the larvae will come down and feed at the base of a secondary bud for 1 or 2 days before it goes to the nut cluster. So at this site here, I'd say that without the treatments, we would have nut entry within 2 days. Okay, a nut entry has, you will note on the nutlet, there'll be frass or granular excrement from the larvae on the outside of the nut, plus there'll be some webbing where the larvae will kind of web nuts together to ensure that if it's in a nut and it doesn't fall off. And at this stage, one larvae can feed on 3, 4, or 5 nutlets because the nutlets are so small. Okay, and there's 2 to 4 generations of this insect per year. This first generation, which occurs during May, is the most important because the nutlets are small. The second generation is approximately 42 days later. Most years we do not treat for second generation, but on a light crop year it's important that we monitor activity because it could be important with the light crop because the nuts have gotten bigger. At this time, during that second generation, the larvae will only attack 1, maybe 2 nuts. So not quite as important. If it's a heavy crop year, we're definitely not treating, but under light crop years where you need to save all the pecans you can, second generation is important. And we can still use pheromone traps to monitor activity. We can still find eggs on nutlets, so we have the ability to go out and make treatment decisions. One of the best tools that a producer can use in a pest management program is money spent on the PNC pheromone traps. And what we have here is the wing trap. There are several styles of pheromone traps on the market. They all work. The key to the trapping system is the pheromone lure, which is placed in the bottom of the trap. In this case here, you can see the gray rubber septa. It looks like a large pencil eraser, which is the key. It contains the pheromone. The septa is just kind of a standard. It just depends on what pheromone is impregnated with it. These traps can be purchased as kits, 1 trap kit, 2 or 3 trap kit, or they can be purchased in a bulk form. We recommend 3 traps per 50 acres. If you have 50 acres or more, we need at least 5 traps. The pheromone is specific for pecan nut casebearer. On occasion though, we do get an accidental moth wander in, but the casebearer has a very identifying character in the band of or ridge of scales which stands up on the basal third of the wing and becomes very obvious in these traps. But this is a key. Traps should go out prior to the onset of an adult flight, and for this part of the state here in Central Texas is about mid-July. South Texas we recommend about mid-April. For South Texas, probably the 1st of April, and for the northern part of the state around the end of April, which allows for the continued movement north of the movement of activity. What we're keying in on is the onset of a flight, so we need to make sure we have the traps out early. In our first checks, we're going to have 0 counts in our traps, and this is important to record that 0 data. What we're keying in on is the initial catch, and from the initial catch we consider the first catch where you have 2 consecutive nights in a row of collections. From these collections we can predict the onset of egg lay or oviposition, and we can have an estimate of the start of nut entry. We cannot tell you from the trap catches if you have to treat or not, but we can tell you when egg lay starts, which allows a producer to manage his time, to know when to go into the orchard to scout, to make sure he has his materials lined up. As far as time of treatment, it depends on how long a producer takes to treat his orchard. Some people I know can do their orchard in one afternoon. Other people I know, it'll take them 10 days to 2 weeks to get around. They have to start a little earlier, but the information from these traps will allow them to know when activity is started. This insect develops according to temperature, and this year is an excellent example where traps paid for themselves. We had a very warm April. Activity was very early. In some parts of the state, activity is 1 to 2 weeks earlier than normal. The traps alerted producers that activity has already started. Things are early because of the warm temperatures. Therefore, activity has been moved up. This allows producers to be in early to monitor and prevent crop loss.